Look at this. The 30 people that have lasted the 2 days. Well done. Give yourselves a round of applause. Excellent work. Wonderful. Well, this forum is the product of a broad and diverse alliance representing more than 7 million Australians, so there's no better way to wrap the discussions and outline the next steps than to bring up on stage several of the key people behind some of the deeper conversations that took place in the various breakout rooms. So, let's get those folks a microphone and get them up here. Thanks to Corey also, we've got a number of recorded submissions from yesterday's discussions. These clips will be shared with everyone following the forum via email and will also be available on YouTube. Now, providing us, here we go. All right, can we get everyone up here? Let's get all the folks up here. Laura, Andrew, Fiona, Councillor Chan, and Selena Garcia, James Whelan, and is Lara Panikov here or John Grimes? Are they here? No? Or Cam Crawford? Is Cam Crawford here? Oh, great. Thanks, Cam. Come on up here. Come and line up. Line up right here. All right. Fantastic. This is our assembly. We're going to do a quick rap. All right. Can you guys rhyme? Because we're going to do a rap. Is that something? No. Uncle Ray's going to sing later, so we'll save that for then. All right, so we've got the microphones. Yeah, come on, let's start down here. First of all, I want you to introduce yourself. Tell us why you're here, who's your working group, or who are your stakeholders, and tell us the key opportunities, challenges, and actions you identified. All right, go for it, go.
Sure, thank you, Dan. I'm Fiona Armstrong. I'm the founder and Strategic Projects Director at Climate and Health Alliance. So we have the pleasure of working with health groups from many different disciplines, healthcare service providers, research and academic institutions. We've been talking with policymakers. In the health sector, we view the human body, or within the health community, we view the human body as a whole system. And that's the way we want to see climate change tackled. We can't do this one sector or one body part at a time. We want to see a multi-portfolio, cross-government approach to tackling climate change. So that's why we're putting forward a comprehensive climate plan. That means that we will consider the health implications of climate policy that we develop in every sector: energy, environment, transport, etc. So we're calling for a multi-portfolio ministerial forum to guide the implementation of a national strategy on climate health and wellbeing for Australia. We want a national climate adaptation assessment to understand where vulnerable communities are, and so that we know where to direct policy and investment. We want an economic analysis of the health benefits associated with carefully designed climate policies. And we want to see First Nations knowledge and wisdom put at the heart of climate change and health decisions. We also want a sustainable development unit to guide decarbonisation of healthcare. That's just a snapshot.
Fantastic. Round of applause for Fiona. That's great. All right. Lara.
Hi, so I'm Lara Panchkov. I'm Growth and Market Development Manager at Fluence. So Fluence is a global provider of storage technology across lots of different countries. And I'm from a team of global power market analysts, and we look at different energy markets and we try and figure out where can storage add the most value to the power grid and help it decarbonize the electricity sector the most. So over these last 2 days, we've been doing a lot of deep thinking of what is the role of storage for emissions reduction? So how can we add the most renewable energy possible in a safe, stable, and low-cost way? So we thought through things like, what are the policy gaps we have at the moment, and what is the role of the government right now with the resources we have at hand? So we thought through 3 different things that we're going to take forward. So one is working with the Clean Energy Finance Corporation and NAIF, the Northern Australia Infrastructure Fund, to see where we can deploy more debt financing right now to energy storage projects. Number 2 is working with state governments to de-risk procurement of storage, to take a little bit of risk out of the market revenue, to make sure projects that are almost about to happen can happen faster. And then 3, thinking through a broader, longer-term mechanism that we're calling a renewable energy storage target. So using what we did to encourage renewable energy projects called the RET, or the Renewable Energy Target, trying to figure out how we can adapt that to storage to really enable more and more renewables.
Fantastic. Ret to rest. All right. Fantastic, Lara. That was great. Very good. Now, these two were great. They were like under 2 minutes. Everyone else has got laptops. The whole internet's connected. I don't know what they're going to be doing. Hopefully they don't read Wikipedia. Go for it. Introduce yourself. Kick it off.
Hi everyone, I'm Selena Garcia. I'm with Climate Work Centre, which is part of Monash University Sustainable Development Institute. I'm here because I work on issues around land use and climate change. And over the last few days, I've been helping to co-convene discussions around the role of nature in achieving net zero. A couple of themes that came out of the conversations we've been having with a range of people working across different parts of the land use sector really highlighted the importance of Indigenous peoples and are really embedding First Nations perspectives when we think about nature-based solutions around land use issues, and the real link between trying to reconcile past grievances and contemporary grievances and thinking about land use issues and the need to really honour the right to self-autonomy for Indigenous peoples when we're thinking about climate change issues as they relate to land use. A second theme that we really talked about was around carbon markets and the role they will have in shaping the future of land use, but also some caution around not over-relying on the market to provide the solution to all of the aspects of the land use and nature discussions that we talked about, and particularly really trying to avoid the perverse outcomes that come from thinking about either climate or nature goals as separate from one another. And the third area that we talked about was really needing to get into much more deeper and coordinated action from government in conversation with First Nations peoples, with civil society, with academia and with the land use sector to really unpack some of the issues and really get to a more nuanced understanding of the role of nature-based solutions in our climate emissions reduction strategies.
Great. Thank you, Selena. Yeah, round of applause. All right, Laura.
Hi, my name's Laura Symes. I'm also with the Climate Work Centre. I am 50% of the Perth office of the Climate Work Centre, and I am broadly working in industry decarbonisation policy. For the last 2 days at this session and yesterday's session, we were talking about the opportunities that decarbonisation of industry can offer. We had a second session, which was headed by Warwick, and I believe he's gone now. So I'm going to try and roll them both together because we consolidated it into one group today. But broadly, both sessions ended up really coalescing around the massive potential for decarbonising clustered regions, so bringing renewable energy into those clustered industrial regions or having renewable energy on site. The types of things, given that this is a very kind of localised action, the types of things that we saw that the federal government could do to help to accelerate that were so support isn't just about grants. Government procurement power is substantial, and if you apply certain kind of criteria to government procurement, such as carbon content and local sourcing, that can have a transformative impact on the way that innovative new low carbon materials can come into the market and become commercial. And secondly, that early signals unleash creativity. So by setting an emissions reduction target and doing those regional decarbonisation roadmaps, you provide a clear signal that everyone can rally around.
Yes, great. Let's provide those signals. Well done. Thank you. You know, people, they rubbish virtue signalling. I call it leadership. I don't know what people are talking about. James.
Thank you, Dan. Am I able to bring up the slide that I'd like to
James
use?
has a transport slide. It's really groovy.
Hopefully.
I'm sure it doesn't have a lot of text on it. I'm sure
may or
it's
may not be
just a
loading.
picture with one word.
James Whelan. I work with Climate Action Network Australia and across the Better Futures program, bringing together various stakeholders around transport initiatives. It's been a terrific 2-session discussion around transport. Really pleased to have folks from Lease Express in the room, Tesla, various community groups across the country, and others. We started with Audrey Quick from the Australia Institute, a policy researcher around climate and energy who leads their transport work at the Australia Institute, introduced us to a framework that was useful for the next 2 hours of discussion. It's a hierarchy that suggests that you should avoid carbon-intensive transport first as the first place to start with your policy interventions before then shifting and improving, and that the hierarchy should go in that order. We found, though, that our thinking went to the improve, and we spent quite a bit of time in how to reduce emissions across the way that Australians currently get around in our cities and towns, and less attention, somewhat less, to the shifting, modal shift to get people out of relying so much on their private motor vehicles. And avoiding was the real challenge. How do you avoid? And I want to start there on avoiding. We see a major obstacle is the siloing, the segmentation of different parts of government, and where if we had more connected up government and integration between urban planning, let's say, and transport planning, we could see fewer people in transport disadvantaged situations. And there were some case studies that were shared in great detail where there's absolute reliance on cars in families and households where there's minimal choice around that, very poorly served by public transport or active transport. The big ticket item, I think, where a lot of our attention went was to a major redirection of transport funding, where currently less than 5% of transport funding nationally goes to active and public transport. The Climate Council, who are not here with us, but who prior to the election advocated 70% of all transport budgets should go to active and public transport. That's where our group was really unleashed in terms of creativity, just all the great things that could be done in a fair, fast and inclusive or equitable way to get people travelling in very different ways, lower carbon transport.
Awesome. Thank you, James. Great. Oh, I really regret not bringing my bike to Canberra to get here. All right, Andrew.
Thank you, Dan. So, Andrew Peterson, CEO of the Business Council for Sustainable Development and also the co-chair of the Corporate and Finance Task Force of the BFA. I am here actually in one of three roles, can't you tell? The trinity of Serena Stewart and Melissa Edwards from the UTS Business School, who co-hosted the sector workshop yesterday on the sexy title of How Businesses Are Reducing Emissions and Decarbonising Supply Chains. What was interesting about the session is how poorly attended it was, at least in person. So shame on you people, because what's interesting about the session is that it is a very international conversation that is going on about that particular issue because of that thing called Scope 3. And when you look at that particular issue, the conversation very oriented obviously towards the production obligations around Scope 3 emissions, but where's the conversation around the consumer? And that was one of the key call-outs that we had, that there wasn't in the room that voice of the consumer, although ironically, we were all consumers in the room. So one of the challenges is, well, how do you engage from an educative point of view to a country around the obligation that you have, we all have, as consumers in relation to our own Scope 3 emissions? And particularly because the emissions of a large number of products and services and technologies that we access on a daily basis comes not just from Australia, but also offshore. And that in itself is a real challenge for this country because of its geography, less so its demography. So just to reiterate, the purpose of the session was around how to understand how to accelerate towards net zero in the supply chain through business collaboration. And how is that possible in a country where we are quite, in very many sectors, duopolistic? So how do you have a pre-competitive discussion around the sharing of information in relation to Scope 3 emissions when we can't even have a fascinating conversation around Scope 1 or Scope 2 without the ACCC getting very heady? So what we came up with was, in addition to the need for a broader conversation that we think that the Australian government should be having with the Australian community around its responsibility in relation to Scope 3, there were three very specific call-outs. The first was that business would very much like to see some methodological standards and incentives for calculating, exchanging and displaying environmental data. Because if we don't do that, how do we inform the consumer about what their own responsibility is? The second is there an opportunity around a sort of an internationalisation of guidelines for production of environmentally responsible products? It's happened in certain sectors, it's certainly certified in some, but can you have it as some sort of international conversation? And we think that's possible. And the third was, how do you go about getting a government to invest in research to achieve successful digitalisation for a green economy? because we think that if you talk about digitalisation in this country, you can't not talk about the green economy at the same time. They're our three things. Thank you very much. Back to Dan.
Thank you, Andrew. Very unlike business to put the onus of Scope 3 on the consumer. That's very unlike. All right, let's move on. Carl? Sorry, Cam.
Thanks, Dan. Cam Crawford, the Energy Transition Manager for WWF Australia. Firstly, a huge shout out to Hilly Montague from ACF and Phil Freeman from WWF, who also helped facilitate this session, and the great team that was in the room and online that contributed to these points that I'm probably going to butcher on your behalf. I'm very sorry, but no, I'll give it a shot. And I think there's a pretty strong theme with some of the other points that have been made too around the importance of coordination. I have the pleasure too that, I guess I'm fortunate in that I'm following on from the Sunshot discussion that was this morning as well, which covered a lot of this in a lot more detail with some incredible minds that have sat behind that work to pull all of it together. But really, I guess just to summarise again what they said this morning, the need for a coordinated export strategy that actually draws across multiple portfolios in government, particularly from climate change, trade, energy, infrastructure and regional development. And that really, builds into this idea of place-based renewable energy precincts being one of the key enablers that sits underneath that to underpin the opportunity that presents. Working with the safeguards mechanism as a market signal for investment to also trigger the investment required in those precincts. Shaping up procurement, again, that seems to be another theme that's come through. With government and related contracting in this space, and also not forgetting our role in the region, the Asia Pacific, and the opportunity that we have to help our neighbours with this energy transformation. Yes, it was the Sunshot Renewable Energy Export Group, strategy group, but it was also, I think, sort of tagged as the Simon Curry Make Australia Make Again group. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That was great. Alexi, local governments.
Thank you. I'm filling in for William Chan, who jumped into the local government working group sessions today and yesterday at the last minute and did an amazing job. I'm speaking on behalf of, we've got a big crew here who are also online as well. Kathy, Chris, Darcy, Jack, Portia, I'm sure there are others I'm missing, but we had a great session yesterday and a great session today. The gist of where we got to was we believe that local governments can be the secret weapon to help the feds meet their targets and to help us all tackle climate change. It was an interesting thing to hear David Pocock yesterday say that I think if you add up all the state targets, they hit 42% of the 43% 2030 target, and so there's really not much more for the feds to do. Similarly with local government, there's 530 odd councils around Australia, and if you just take 60 of those targets, we're over halfway to the 43% target as well. So we think there's a mandate there for local governments, and there's a lot of work that's been going on for quite a while. We, as most people will know, the Paris Agreement not only sets out a need to get to 2 and 1.5 degrees, but also recognises and acknowledges the roles of subnational governments when it comes to the negotiations. And so the first thing we want from the feds is to recognise the contributions and the ambition of local government within their nationally determined contributions, so we can actually feed up to that and have a say. The second thing is a partnership, similar to what some of these guys were saying, a bit like an accord to reset the relationship. There hasn't really been a relationship for the last 10 years, but a way to actually make sure that we can have some vertical integration between the three layers of government, and we can align at the very start, here are the priorities of local government. Potentially there can be working groups that come out of that around transport or coastal inundation or regulatory reform or whatever it might be. Some really interesting comments as well from the audience today talking about horizontal integration, so making sure that we've got that across a council and across the different federal agencies. And finally, we want funding to implement that accord, and most importantly to understand what the real costs of resilience and adaptation are going to be. At the moment, money gets thrown around, local government want X million for this and X 100 million to tackle climate change, but we want a piece of work where we work with academia, local, federal, the people that were on the panels today, they're the first people we'll invite, to actually try and understand what is that evidence-based cost on a regional a regional level. So we would have loved to have had more federal government people in the audience today. We had 0, but luckily we had the minister told us that he'd be happy to catch up with us before he was the minister a couple of months ago. So we're going to be knocking on his door every day to say, hold you to the promise.
Get in there, get in there. Thank you, Alexi. And thanks everybody up here. Thank you so much. That was very inspiring. It was very good. You guys can go back down. I've got some more talking to do here. Yeah, great. Really great sessions, really great assembly here. Let's check out some of these wonderful pictures up here. Oh, yes, this is great. Thank you, Josie from Digital Storytellers. Josie is on the line. Can you hear us, Josie?
I can hear you.
Oh, my God, it works. Oh, fantastic. How did you enjoy the last 2 days, Josie? What did you find most inspiring?
Well, I've had the honour of being here just for today. I am really inspired. I just hope that we can act fast enough. It's just brilliant to hear the bricklaid of capacities that we have in Australia, and the brains in the room has been amazing. So I really don't deserve any accolades for the work that I've done. Purely just delivering your message. So thank you for having me.
There's some great pictures here. I really like the business manifesto, and in the corner you've got aspire to decarbonise ourselves. That's a great one. Also like preparing Australia for climate impacts, and to the right of that up there, it's like to provide safe pathway. I was there for that conversation, and it really hit hard. Yeah, some beautiful stuff here, Josie. What have you noticed? Because you did last year's conference as well. Have you noticed a distinct different tone this year?
I didn't do last year's conference, but I have done similar conferences. I'm seeing a massive shift to people collaborating more. It feels like we're all in the same room now, even though we have this sort of huge responsibility to make the change and really quickly. It's just great that we're all sort of in the room talking about these issues.
Great, terrific. Everyone, please give it up for Josie. Thank you so much. Now, if there are any Canberrans in the room or folks like me from out of town who are staying one extra night, there's an after party at Capital Brewing. I'm going to go there for a beer and a burger after this. It's in Fishwick, not far away. Big thank you to the sponsors of this forum, the UNSW Canberra, International Universities Climate Alliance, Energy Estate and HESTA, and boy, what a jam-packed couple of days it's been. Forums like this, for me, energise my work, and I hope they energise you as well. This year's forum, for me, has definitely been a very different vibe from the one last year. This year, I kind of felt like that everyone in the room was kind of seen, and I think that's really great. And everyone in this room, the conversations I had, everyone is hungry, hungry to like normalise ambition, hungry to push those NDCs where they need to be, hungry to talk justice, hungry to work collaboratively and constructively with government, and hungry to bring the Australian people with us as well. We've all got a lot of work ahead of us, but I can just see how hungry we all are to work together finally. And as we wrap up, I would like to introduce Bishop Philip Huggins up here to close out the session. Not a stranger to events like this. Philip is a member of the Interfaith Liaison Committee to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And then Ray's going to end the day.
So this is a little meditation as we complete more silence than words, just to help us to feel what's been taking place and then go in goodwill together. And then Ray's going to sing a verse of a song, just briefly. So you might like to begin just being attentive again after all of the thinking and talking of our breath. Our breathing in, our breathing out, each breath a gift in the gift of life, through forces completely beyond our control. The gift of life on this beautiful planet, in this vast universe, stars beyond Saturn, us down here on the ground, in the web of life, the kookaburras and the kangaroos and the waratahs and the wallabies, one another. You might like to close your eyes and just two little words as we go on our ways. Firstly, to feel our gratitude, that our feelings of gratitude for these 2 days, let us feel them in our spirit. The best of times are when we're with people who want to dream big, who want to do good things, and are good to be with, are fun to be with. This is one of those best of times, kind of icon of what the human family can be and do. So much to feel grateful for. All the preparations that have gone into these days. The many hours people have worked to prepare their papers, how to best contribute. The background people, the IT people, the catering people, the folk of the Better Futures Forum. And then our gratitude for the moments of illumination and inspiration in what we've heard and the conversations we've had. The deepening of friendship, the discovery of new friendship, the possibilities for fresh collaboration, the sense of belonging to something good. And with our gratitude, that sense of, okay, now we persist. The light we can see upon our next steps, what we can see we can do, what we can see we must do. The quality of loving intelligence needed.
And on behalf of our Indigenous Peoples Organisation and all of our representatives, thank you for this invitation here to learn from each other, to learn how to talk with each other, to work with each other, and to walk together into the future. This little song is in language, it's from the Torres Straits. It's a prayer, and I'm asking our Creator to send His Holy Spirit and His holy messengers, His angels, to be with us until morning. Baba waya ninu mai ki mari. Baba waya ninu mai ki angela. Mabuya kaimel inu kubinu inu kubinu kurusi kagaiga. Baba waya ninu mai ki mari. Baba waya ninu mai ki angela. Ngamonia kaimel inu kubinu inu kubinu karusi kagaiga. Inu kubinu Inukubenu Karusi Gaiga.
That's it. Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Phil. That was beautiful. And we'll see you next time, I guess. Yeah, bye.